This is the beginning of part 2 of the video. Since this machine is a duplicator, we have to make a mold of our stone. For the small stones, I use Sculpt D3 oven baked clay that I get at the local craft store. How I make the mold is first I put the initial layer of clay, then I bake the clay and the stone in the oven at 275 degrees. I do this because if I try to remove the wet clay, then it will deform, and I want a perfect copy of the base of the stone. Once that's done, then I add additional layers, including the feet. And what I want to do is ensure that the stone, the aspect vertically, forward and back, is pretty much correct. If you notice, the daiza and the mold are nearly identical, because what I try to do is ensure that the daiza is pretty much the shape of the final daiza that I'm looking for. For the larger stones, I use plaster of Paris. You can buy this at the local craft store, or you can go to Home Depot and buy a much larger bag with a per unit price that is much lower than at the local craft store. I'm very surprised at how much plaster I use in making the mold. As indicated previously, I want the mold to pretty well match the shape of the daizas, the finished edge. So what I do is I drew a line on the stone, then I took potter's clay and I placed it above the line, and then immersed the stone in the plaster, and the clay held that line that I wanted for the daiza. Some of the stones you're making a mold for might have cavities, have concave surfaces, or be very rough, which will lock the stone into the mold. So what I do in that case is I coat it with potter's clay. Get that at the local craft store again. Fill in all the roughness, smooth it out so that it will come out of the mold. On all the stones, I do coat them with an oil, cooking oil, to help get them out of the mold. What I do is, holding the stone, just tap it around the edges until it comes off. Sometimes the mold breaks. I've never been able to reattach the mold into one piece, so now I just throw it away and start over again. In making the molds, I always use hot glue to attach the mold to the work surface. The Scully 3, this works great. One thing about plaster, hot glue will not adhere to the plaster. So when you pour the plaster into the form, I always have plywood or wood of some sort in the bottom so that I can hot glue the mold to my work surface. I always attach the mold first. Before I glue it, I ensure that my stylus can reach all areas of the mold. When that's done, then I hot glue the wood block. Once again, ensuring that the carving tool can reach wood for every place that needs to be carved. I found that removing these tears the wood. The hot glue actually soaks into the grain and rips the wood. So I attach a small piece of plywood to both sides to save my original work surface. The first thing I do after I attach the mold and the wood block to the work surface is make alignment marks. I make it on both sides so that if anything goes out of alignment, I discover it as soon as possible. I do it on the front and on the back. And I check that alignment every time I change my tool. And I'm not sure if I've said it before, but I have the same tool on both sides. This machine is not very stiff. There is flexure in it when you're carving. So when I'm carving non-critical areas where I'm routing out the center of the wood block, then I'm holding the Dremel tool. When I'm approaching the edges of the mold, then I always hold the stylus side. The reason for that is if I'm holding the Dremel tool, pushing back, the stylus would hit the back of the mold and the Dremel tool would continue to carve back through the wood and creating a space between the stone and the final daiza. Once most of the wood has been ground out and reaching the critical areas, particularly on the top edge or in the bottom, I only go up and down and forward and back. The reason is that in rotating and going side to side, there's a drag as you're grinding the wood, and so when that happens, this rotates either backwards or forwards, but once again leave a space between the stone and the finished daizas. When I'm carving the edge of the mold, you notice the tool is way down into the wood block. So I only move very vertical, leaving a 1/4 inch above the rim of this mold before I come over and route over the edge. I do this because we have tool marks, the wood chips. As I say, if I'm not careful, there is flexing, there's drag. When I'm carving vertical, I'm carving so this drags behind my stylus. Once we're finished carving the cavity out of the wood block, you notice there's a lot of excess wood. So the first thing I do is I pop this off. I leave the mold on the table until I have a finished daiza. I can make mistakes. I can discover that the lip does not fit the stone nicely. In that case, I still have the mold attached. Attach a new block, recarve it. This machine is not magic. I've never been able to take the stone and drop it into the cavity and have it fit. I always have to work on the sides, the bottom, quite a bit to get the stone fitted successfully. One thing I want to mention is if you're thinking about building a machine based on a router, you might think about replacing the router with something like this. Because with a router, you're only going to have about 1.5 to 2 inches deep from the router plate to the tip of the burr. And what I found is that you're going to need much more access than 2 inches. In this case, this mold is about 2 inches deep, has very steep vertical sides, and what happens is you'll find when you're digging in the wood, because this is slanted, what you're going to end up with much more than 2 inches. And that router is not going to be able to take you as deep as you need to go. But like the plans, like the site I was showing you, that's a great machine. I'm just going to replace it with a different tool. Just briefly, the tools that I use. If you're carving, you probably have these and others. But I use the Dremel tool, rotary tool with a flex shaft. This is very nice because it's nice and narrow. I can have a lot of extension down into the wood. And some of these, as I'll say over and over again, some of these molds has very steep and they're deep. This works great. There's Fordham makes a nice rotary tool. Has various attachments to it. They look really nice. The bits that I use when I'm actually carving the wood on the table, I usually use bits by Typhoon. They're Typhoon carbon burrs. I like them. They move a lot of wood. They don't burn the wood very much. When it's off, I use the Dremel burrs and router bits, and I use carving burrs by Kutzall, Kutzall. They're nice also. I should have said also when I'm carving, when I'm doing the duplication, I use the Dremel router bits an awful lot also. Here's the 2 Typhoon burrs that I use. The Kutzall burr, of course the router bits. I do use this engraving tool when I'm doing the carving, and this little engraving tool by Dremel is what I use for all my alignments. Just a quick word on safety. I always wear gloves now. It only takes a split second to interrupt your carving project. Be sure to wear glasses and a dust mask. Well, this is the end of my video. I hope if you're going to build a machine similar to this or any other machine that I've given you some great ideas for building, using it, building molds, and my name is Rich Knox, and I hope to see you at the Suiseki shows.